What if one letter could change everything we know about the royal family? A newly uncovered letter from Princess Diana to Princess Anne has sparked fresh debate about her final years. Hidden for decades, its existence raises urgent questions about Diana's struggles and her relationship with the monarchy. Why did Diana reach out to Anne? What was in the letter that kept it hidden? And now that it has surfaced, how will it reshape Diana's legacy? Let's get into details. For years, Buckingham Palace had chosen silence when it came to Diana's personal letters. Many of her notes to close friends and confidants had been released in the past, providing insight into her struggles within the royal institution. But this letter was different. Addressed to Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, it raised more questions than answers. What had Diana written to a woman with whom she was never particularly close? And why had Anne, known for her discretion, never mentioned it? The timing of the revelation only deepened the intrigue. In an era where the royal family was under increasing scrutiny, with discussions surrounding its relevance in a modern world, the resurfacing of Diana's words reignited a long-standing debate about the monarchy's treatment of its most vulnerable members. Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach to duty, had rarely been involved in public discussions about Diana's legacy. She had always been regarded as one of the hardest-working members of the royal family, carrying out engagements without complaint and rarely seeking attention. Unlike her brothers, she had never been drawn into media-fueled controversies. Her decision to acknowledge the letter at this moment in time raised speculation about whether she had finally decided to address Diana's words after all these years. To understand the full significance of the letter, it was essential to look back at the complex relationship between Diana and Anne. While both women were part of the same royal institution, they had little in common. Diana, young, glamorous, and adored by the press, had a natural ability to connect with people in a way that few royals had managed before her. Anne, on the other hand, was known for her direct manner and lack of interest in public admiration. Where Diana charmed crowds with warmth and relatability, Anne focused on duty and tradition, often appearing indifferent to public perception. Their differences were apparent from the very beginning. When Diana became engaged to Prince Charles in 1981, she was thrust into a world of rigid traditions and expectations. Unlike other royal brides who had come before her, Diana's arrival was met with an unprecedented level of media attention. The public was captivated by her and the press followed her every move. But within the walls of Buckingham Palace, her transition into royal life was not as smooth. Among the senior royals, Anne was perhaps the least interested in engaging with the future Princess of Wales. Anne had always been known for her pragmatic approach to royal life. She had grown up in an era where duty came before emotion, where royal engagements were carried out with efficiency rather than personal charm. Unlike her brothers, who had received more media attention due to their positions as heirs to the throne, Anne had spent much of her early life working behind the scenes. She was the first royal to reject the offer of royal titles for her children, insisting that they should live as private citizens rather than be burdened by expectations. She believed in the value of hard work over public adoration, a stark contrast to the growing public fascination with Diana. Their initial interactions were far from warm. According to accounts from royal insiders, Diana had made an effort to connect with Anne in the months leading up to her wedding to Prince Charles. She wanted to build relationships within the family, to understand the traditions that governed royal life. But Anne, who had little patience for what she considered unnecessary sentimentality, reportedly showed little interest in Diana's attempts to reach out. Some suggested that Anne saw Diana's efforts as superficial, an attempt to win favor rather than genuinely integrate into the family. Whether or not that's true, the distance between them remained. Their relationship grew even more distant over the years. Anne's skepticism toward Diana became more apparent as the younger princess's popularity soared. While Anne continued to fulfill her royal duties largely out of the spotlight, Diana's every move was scrutinized, celebrated, and sometimes criticized by the press. The public adored Diana in a way that no royal had been adored before. She had an ability to connect with people on an emotional level, whether it was through her humanitarian work or her public candor about personal struggles. To many, she was more than just a princess. She was a symbol of empathy and change. For Anne, this level of attention seemed unnecessary. She had spent her life proving that royalty was about duty, not fame. While Diana was praised for her openness, Anne remained steadfast in her belief that the monarchy should maintain its traditions without catering to public emotions. She had built a reputation for being one of the hardest-working royals, undertaking hundreds of engagements each year without complaint. Unlike Diana, she rarely spoke about her personal struggles, maintaining a sense of privacy that was consistent with the monarchy's old-fashioned values. One of the moments that reportedly deepened their distance was the issue of royal godparents. When Prince William was born in 1982, it was widely assumed that Anne would be chosen as one of his godparents. Given that Prince Charles had taken on the role of godfather to Anne's son, Peter Phillips, many believed the gesture would be reciprocated. But Diana and Charles instead chose a different selection of godparents for their firstborn, a decision that raised eyebrows among royal watchers. While Anne never publicly commented on the matter, her absence from Prince Harry's christening 2 years later only fueled speculation that she had taken it as a personal slight. The tension between the two women became more apparent as Diana's marriage to Charles deteriorated. By the early 1990s, the cracks in their relationship were visible to the world. The media had begun speculating about Charles's ongoing association with Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana was increasingly isolated within the royal family. While she had once been seen as the monarchy's brightest star, she now found herself at odds with an institution that had little interest in discussing emotions or personal struggles. Anne, who had long upheld the traditional expectations of royal service, reportedly had little sympathy for Diana's situation. Some believed that she viewed Diana's public discussions about her struggles as damaging to the monarchy, an approach that went against the discretion that had been expected of royal family members for generations. The BBC Panorama interview in 1995 was a turning point. Diana's decision to speak openly about her failing marriage, her struggles with mental health, and the pressures of royal life sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. It was unprecedented for a senior royal to lay bare such personal details in a televised interview. While the public largely sympathized with Diana, the royal family was said to be deeply displeased. Anne, like many others in the institution, saw the interview as a breach of royal protocol. Unlike Diana, she had always believed that personal matters should remain private, and the idea of discussing royal struggles in front of millions was seen as unacceptable. By the time of Diana's tragic passing in 1997, any possibility of a closer relationship between her and Anne had long faded. Anne continued her duties without public discussion of Diana's impact or struggles. The royal family, as expected, maintained a firm stance of moving forward, avoiding prolonged discussions about internal conflicts. But Diana's legacy remained, shaping the public's perception of the monarchy in ways that no one could ignore. Now, decades later, a letter written by Diana to Anne had surfaced, raising new questions about what she may have wanted to say before her life was cut short. The mere existence of such a letter suggested that, despite their differences, Diana had chosen to reach out to Anne at some point in her life. What had she written, and why had it remained hidden for so long? Princess Diana's early years in the royal family were marked by intense media attention and public fascination. As a young bride entering one of the world's most scrutinized institutions, she faced immense pressure to adapt to royal expectations. Unlike other members of the family, Diana quickly became a beloved public figure, her warmth and relatability endearing her to millions. However, this growing admiration also placed her at odds with the traditional values upheld by senior royals, including Princess Anne. Anne, known for her strong work ethic and unwavering dedication to duty, had built a reputation for keeping her personal life out of the public eye. She preferred a straightforward approach to royal responsibilities, often avoiding media engagements unless absolutely necessary. In contrast, Diana's rise to prominence was deeply intertwined with the press. Her natural ability to connect with the public, particularly through her charitable work, positioned her as a modernizing force within the monarchy, something that did not always sit well with more traditional members of the family. Despite being part of the same institution, Diana and Anne had little personal interaction beyond formal royal engagements. The differences in their approach to royal life were evident in their body language and limited exchanges during public events. While Diana's presence was often accompanied by an enthusiastic reception from crowds and media, Anne remained focused on her commitments, rarely engaging in public displays of warmth or affection. This divergence in their public personas fueled speculation about an underlying distance between them. By the mid-1980s, Diana's marriage to Prince Charles had begun to show visible cracks, further complicating her position within the royal family. The increasing media scrutiny surrounding her personal life contributed to a sense of isolation. While some members of the family adhered strictly to tradition and protocol, Diana was more open in expressing her emotions, a trait that made her both beloved by the public and at times a controversial figure within the palace. Anne, who had long maintained a stance of privacy and restraint, continued to fulfill her royal duties without being drawn into the media's portrayal of Diana's struggles. As the decade progressed, Diana's humanitarian efforts took center stage. Her work with AIDS patients, her visits to hospitals, and her commitment to destigmatizing illnesses reflected a hands-on approach that resonated with people worldwide. Unlike many previous royals, she chose to engage directly with individuals affected by the causes she supported, rather than maintaining a purely ceremonial role. This direct engagement further elevated her status as the people's princess, setting her apart from other members of the royal family, including Anne. Anne, meanwhile, remained one of the hardest-working royals, carrying out hundreds of engagements each year. Her efforts, while impactful, often went unnoticed compared to Diana's high-profile charitable work. Unlike Diana, Anne did not seek public acknowledgement for her contributions, and her preference for working behind the scenes meant that much of her work received less media attention. This contrast in visibility contributed to the public perception that the two women occupied very different spaces within the monarchy. Diana's decision to speak candidly about her struggles in a televised interview in 1995 marked a turning point in her relationship with the royal family. The BBC Panorama interview, in which she discussed the difficulties of her marriage and life within the institution, was unprecedented. While it garnered widespread public sympathy, it was viewed within the royal household as a departure from traditional discretion. Anne, like other senior royals, maintained her stance of avoiding personal disclosures, reinforcing her belief that royal life was about duty rather than individual hardship. As Diana's time in the royal family continued to be shaped by media narratives, Anne remained a steadfast figure, carrying out her responsibilities without becoming entangled in public controversies. The two women, despite their shared roles within the monarchy, continued on separate paths, each representing different aspects of royal life. Diana's open-hearted approach contrasted with Anne's more reserved demeanor, a dynamic that further cemented their distinct legacies. In the years leading up to Diana's passing in 1997, she increasingly turned to writing as a way to process her experiences. Letters and personal notes became a means of communication, allowing her to articulate thoughts that could not always be shared openly. It was within this context that a letter addressed to Anne emerged, raising questions about what Diana may have hoped to convey. Given their differences, the existence of such a letter suggested an attempt at communication that had previously remained unacknowledged. Diana's final years were marked by a shift in both her personal and public life. After her formal separation from Prince Charles in 1992 and their divorce in 1996, she was no longer officially part of the royal family, but she remained a global icon. No longer bound by the same expectations, she embraced a newfound independence, dedicating herself even more deeply to humanitarian causes. However, with this independence came increased vulnerability. Without the formal security and protections that came with being a senior royal, she found herself more exposed to the scrutiny and pressures of public life. Despite her departure from the royal institution, Diana continued to command international attention. Her work in humanitarian efforts expanded, with a strong focus on landmine removal, AIDS awareness, and child welfare. Her visit to Angola in early 1997, where she walked through a field of active landmines, was one of her most defining moments as an advocate. Her willingness to step into politically sensitive and potentially dangerous situations underscored her commitment to making a difference, often in ways that diverged from traditional royal protocols. During this period, she became increasingly reflective about her experiences within the royal family. Those close to her have noted that she often used letters as a means of expressing her emotions and thoughts, particularly when verbal communication felt impossible. Writing allowed her to navigate the complexities of her life, offering her a sense of control over her narrative. Many of these letters were directed toward close friends, confidants, and charity associates, but the emergence of one addressed to Princess Anne raises questions about the nature of their relationship in Diana's final months. While there is little evidence to suggest that their interactions had significantly changed during this time, it is possible that Diana, as she had done throughout her life, sought a form of resolution or understanding. Anne, known for her discretion and unwavering sense of duty, had remained largely silent about Diana in public, neither engaging in the widespread media coverage of her struggles nor participating in public discourse about her challenges. This made the existence of a letter between them particularly notable. Diana's final months were filled with both new beginnings and lingering uncertainties. Her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed had become a focus of media speculation, and her travels abroad, particularly her time in the Mediterranean, were heavily documented by the press. At the same time, she was reportedly expressing concerns about her personal security, feeling that she was constantly being watched. Her former butler, Paul Burrell, later revealed that she had written letters expressing fears about her safety, though the specifics of these concerns have been the subject of ongoing debate. On August 31, 1997, Diana's life was tragically cut short in a car crash in Paris. Her death sent shockwaves across the world, prompting an outpouring of grief and fundamentally changing the public's relationship with the royal family. In the days following her passing, the institution faced one of its most significant public relations challenges, as many felt that the initial response lacked warmth and sensitivity. It was only after public pressure that Queen Elizabeth II addressed the nation, acknowledging the immense loss that had been felt globally. Amid the mourning, Diana's legacy became even more pronounced. Her impact on humanitarian efforts, her role as a mother, and her ability to connect with people on an emotional level were widely recognized. However, her relationship with the royal family remained a point of discussion, particularly the ways in which she had struggled within the institution. While some members of the royal family publicly acknowledged her contributions, Anne maintained her characteristic silence, neither engaging in public reflection nor participating in the more emotional aspects of the mourning process. The revelation of Diana's letter to Anne decades later added another layer to the ongoing conversation about Diana's final years. If she had indeed reached out to Anne, it would suggest that, despite their differences, there was something Diana felt was important enough to communicate. Whether the letter contained personal reflections, a plea for understanding, or a simple effort to bridge a long-standing distance, its existence prompted renewed discussions about the complexities of royal relationships. As time moved forward, Diana's words and actions continued to influence the royal family in ways that were impossible to ignore. Her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, each carried elements of her legacy in different ways. While William remained closely tied to royal duties, he embraced a more modern and open approach to public engagement. Harry, on the other hand, chose to step away from royal life entirely, citing many of the same struggles his mother had faced. These developments only reinforced the relevance of Diana's past experiences and the way they shaped the future of the monarchy. Decades after Diana's passing, her influence on the monarchy remained undeniable. Discussions about her life, struggles, and impact on the royal institution continued to shape public perceptions of the family. The discovery of a previously undisclosed letter written by Diana added another dimension to this ongoing conversation. Addressed to Princess Anne, the letter's existence became a subject of widespread interest, prompting speculation about why Diana had chosen to write to her and why the letter had remained hidden for so long. Anne's response to the letter's discovery was characteristic of her long-standing approach to public scrutiny. She remained silent. Unlike other members of the royal family, Anne had never engaged in extensive media interactions about Diana, nor had she participated in public discussions about the more personal aspects of royal life. Her commitment to duty had remained unchanged over the years, and she had consistently maintained a preference for privacy over publicity. The emergence of this letter, however, brought renewed focus to her relationship with Diana and what, if anything, had transpired between them in the past. Despite Anne's silence, royal commentators and historians examined the significance of the letter within the broader context of Diana's life. Many of Diana's personal correspondences had previously been released, shedding light on her experiences within the royal family. Her letters often reflected deep emotions, capturing her frustrations, hopes, and concerns in a way that interviews and public appearances could not always convey. Given this history, the fact that she had written to Anne suggested an intent that could not be easily dismissed. The resurfacing of the letter also led to questions about the dynamics within the royal family during Diana's lifetime. While Diana had been seen as a disruptive force by some within the institution, she had also been regarded as a transformative figure who modernized the monarchy's approach to public engagement. Her willingness to connect with people on an emotional level, rather than relying on formalities, had redefined royal interactions. In contrast, Anne had always maintained a more traditional stance, believing that duty should be carried out without the expectation of public approval or validation. In a period where the monarchy was facing increasing scrutiny, particularly with discussions about its role in the modern world, anything connected to Diana inevitably attracted public interest. The younger generation of royals had taken different approaches to their roles, with Prince William continuing to embrace his future as a leader within the institution, while Prince Harry had chosen to step away from royal life, citing pressures that mirrored those his mother had faced. This contrast between the brothers echoed long-standing debates about tradition versus change, a theme that had defined much of Diana's own journey. Diana's approach to royal life had always been markedly different from that of her contemporaries. From the beginning of her time as Princess of Wales, she had rejected certain elements of royal formality in favor of a more personal, hands-on approach. Her decision to sit on the floor and interact directly with children during official engagements, her choice to shake hands with AIDS patients without gloves at a time when misinformation about the disease was rampant, and her open expressions of emotion in public settings were all departures from the traditional royal demeanor. These moments had made her beloved by the public, but had also drawn criticism from those within the institution who believed she was straying too far from royal protocols. Anne, by contrast, had spent her life adhering to a strict set of principles when it came to royal duties. She had a reputation for being one of the hardest-working members of the family, often carrying out hundreds of engagements per year with little media coverage or fanfare. Unlike Diana, she did not seek public approval or validation for her work, choosing instead to focus on fulfilling her obligations efficiently and without unnecessary attention. This fundamental difference in approach may have contributed to the sense of distance between the two women during Diana's lifetime. The central question surrounding the letter remained: what had Diana hoped to convey? While its exact contents were not disclosed, the mere fact that she had chosen to write to Anne spoke volumes. Despite their differences, there may have been a recognition that Anne, with her deep understanding of duty and the burdens of royal life, could have been someone who would at least comprehend the challenges Diana had faced. Whether Diana had sought understanding, closure, or simply a moment of connection, the letter stood as a final attempt to communicate in a way that had not been possible during her lifetime. The reaction from Buckingham Palace was in line with the institution's traditional approach to private matters. There was no official comment. This silence was not unexpected, as the royal family had long maintained a policy of not engaging with speculation about personal correspondences. However, the public's response was markedly different. As news of the letter spread, discussions reignited about Diana's place in history and the ways in which her experiences had shaped the modern monarchy. For many, the resurfacing of the letter underscored the unresolved tensions within the royal family. While Diana had been gone for more than 2 decades, the themes she had raised during her lifetime, openness, emotional connection, and the evolving role of the monarchy remained relevant. Her legacy was not confined to the past but was actively shaping the present and future of the royal institution. Some analysts suggested that the timing of the letter's discovery was particularly significant. In recent years, the royal family had been navigating a period of transition, with generational shifts bringing new challenges. The increased visibility of mental health discussions within the monarchy, particularly through the work of Prince William and Prince Harry, reflected an openness that had not been present during Diana's time. While Anne had remained steadfast in her traditional approach, younger royals were embracing a more transparent, relatable style of leadership. Diana's concerns about the royal family's approach to emotional openness and public engagement had, in some ways, been reflected in later years. While the monarchy remained steeped in tradition, there had been visible shifts toward a more accessible and relatable public presence, particularly with the younger generation of royals. The impact of Diana's life and the lessons learned from her struggles had not been forgotten, even if they were not always openly acknowledged. As time passed, the significance of the letter was viewed as part of the broader narrative of Diana's legacy. It served as a reminder of the complexities within the royal family and the personal dynamics that often remained hidden from public view. The renewed focus on her words, even decades later, underscored the lasting influence she had on both the institution and the individuals within it. Whether Anne ever responded to the letter or acknowledged its contents remained unknown, but the fact that it had resurfaced ensured that Diana's voice, even in written form, continued to be heard. Beyond its immediate impact, the letter's rediscovery highlighted the evolving relationship between the monarchy and the public. In an era of increasing transparency and accountability, historical narratives were being re-examined with fresh perspectives. The royal family, once seen as an untouchable institution, was now expected to engage with discussions about its past and its role in contemporary society. Diana's experiences, once viewed as deeply personal, had become part of a larger conversation about the future of the monarchy. As discussions surrounding the letter continued, one thing remained certain: Diana's influence had not faded with time. Her words, actions, and challenges had left an indelible mark on the institution she had once been part of. Whether the monarchy would fully embrace the changes she had once advocated for remained to be seen, but her legacy continued to shape the discourse, ensuring that her presence was still felt, even decades after her passing. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.